Bunyan, Bunyan, Bunyan. Yay! We are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to A Mighty Blaze. I am Jenna Blum, one of the co-founders of The Blaze. And today I am also the thoughtful bro because, yes, this is a takeover. I am taking over my dear, dear friend Mark Cecil's show because today it is pub day for his epic, and I use that word advisedly, epic debut novel, Bunyan and Henry. Look at this beautiful thing. I cry. I'm not crying, you're crying. Mark, welcome to the Thoughtful Bro.
I'm so happy to be on Thoughtful Bro. It's a great show. It's just such an honor.
I have heard that. I have heard it's good. There also was like this crazy nutball guy who was like interviewing himself about this book. It seems to me there was like the Thoughtful Bro interviewing the Thoughtful Bro. Those of you who are not on Mark's social media yet, you should be because you will see many entertaining things like that. Hello, Priyanka. We are very happy to see you here. We are so excited to be celebrating our own bro's debut novel, Bunyan and Henry, today. This book, I know people use the word epic to describe many things like snowboarding or a really big meal or something, or like really good French fries. But Bunyan and Henry is truly epic. It is a retelling, obviously, of the Paul Bunyan myth, which is why everybody in Mark's immediate circle now wears plaid forever and ever. But it is also an investigation of America at a time when we most need it. America's grotesqueries are all featured in Bunyan and Henry unflinchingly. Also, it is a look at what makes us our best selves in this country. It is also, I think, at its most endearing level, a very personal interrogation of what it takes to live your best and most authentic life, which often requires a lot of courage because it's hard to figure out what you want and then go after it, get after it. Mark is so excited about this, he's actually undressing. So really excited. It also is funny AF, I should point out, which I haven't heard many people talk about yet, but this book is hilarious. It's full of riddles. It's full of, what am I trying to think of? It's like, I was going to say it's full of different fonts, but that's not right. We're tired. We stayed up last night drinking bourbon at the launch party. Okay. I'm only doing this because Mark is my dear bro. I would otherwise be asleep like a tree sloth right now. But it is full of riddles. It's full of jokes. It's full of cleverness. It's full of energy, as is our bro. It's full of this great muscular joie de vivre. And we're going to pop buy links in the chat so that you can buy it for dads, grads, and anybody you know. You should each buy at least 50 copies. And again, go over to Mark's social, check out his dance card for his tour, which he is going to start tonight at the Odyssey Bookshop in South Hadley, Massachusetts. All you Western Mass people, shag butt out there to go see him. And then he is going to New York, baby. Bunyan and Henry taking the world by storm. By the way, no, you can't talk yet. Sorry. Yeah. Zip it. This is not your usual thoughtful bro. I just have to say before you interfere, Mark, that Brendan Slocumb has been on Mark's show called Bunyan and Henry, the Next American Classic, which I totally agree with. And it is already a Goodreads editor's pick. So do yourselves a favor, buy it hot off the press right now. Again, Mark, welcome. Bye.
Thank you for having me on my show. It's great to be here. I'm so happy to see everyone in the audience right now. Thank you for just supporting Thoughtful Bro all these years and for tuning in today. This is a huge, huge day for me, and it's been a long, long journey to get here. But I feel like I have finally crossed the river and set my foot on the opposite bank, and I am a published author, and I will be in South Hadley tonight at Odyssey Bookshop if you are coming out, and I'll be at Powerhouse Arena in New York City tomorrow. So just would love to see you at either of those places. I love meeting readers, and the energy at the launch last night was awesome. It was electric, and I don't know. I just feel like the energy of the book felt like the energy in the crowd.
Yeah, nobody is surprised here to hear that RT Bro has had a very energetic launch. There was some chanting at the launch when he was reading a passage from the book. We were chanting things like, pump that lump, which will make sense to you once you buy and read the book, but you got to buy and read the book. Mark is also going to be appearing in Minnesota, of course. And I honestly think that the Minnesotans are never going to let him leave, so I like be on alert for that. And where else are you going? Like, I know you're.
So then next week I'll be on April 4th, I'll be in Minneapolis, as you said. And then on April 8th, I will be in Louisville, Kentucky. And on April 9th, I'll be in Chicago. And then that's kind of like the real blitz I'm doing over the next 2 weeks. And then after that, I'll be at some book festivals and doing a lot of events around Massachusetts. And if you're interested in coming to see me, which please do, I would love to see you. Just go to markcecilauthor.com and then just click on the events page. It's all there.
Yeah, it's all good. Pamela Klingerhorn, we see you in Minneapolis. And Mary Weber O'Malley, who is our bookseller at Blaze and also does all the other things, will be interviewing Mark there and at Unbound Literary Festival. This man can be bouncing around. He is already losing his voice. What did I say about the tea with honey? Everybody here will be shocked to know that I have been very bossy with Mark, saying like, get somebody to do your social, drink your tea with honey. I'm like the mean stage mom. I'm like a stage mom had a baby with Carmela Soprano. Anyway, okay. So I could have you save your voice by doing all the talking here because I'm so proud of this book. I so love the book. I know it well. I could tell you guys all about Bunyan and Henry or The Beautiful Destiny, which I still haven't figured out on StreamYard how to hold up. But Mark, why don't you do that? Why don't you tell all of your new fans and readers, because you're a published author, like that almost made me cry. Oh my God. Tell everybody what Bunyan and Henry or The Beautiful Destiny is about.
Well, I thought you'd never ask. So
Early.
Bunyan and Henry, or The Beautiful Destiny, is it's a big-hearted retelling of American folklore. It's a kind of remix of the Paul Bunyan tale and the John Henry myth, and they go on a big, rollicking, quirky, satirical adventure across America. But if you dig below that surface, there's more there, and the book allowed me to talk about a lot of ideas that are important to me about race and class and capitalism and indigenous conquest and the environment and really the character of America. But I think in the end, the book is really about a personal transformation and what it means to follow your dreams and live an authentic life. And I'm just so happy with how the book came out. I think it's the kind of book that, the young man that I was in my 20s looking for a way through my life, that guy could read it. A teenager, a high school student could read it. A father and a grandfather could read it. It's really an all ages book, just that digs into a lot of great issues about America and personal destiny.
I love this. Like, it's a small book. It's not very ambitious. It just swings for first base, not for the fences.
It reads quickly.
Notice I use a sport ball metaphor there too.
Yeah.
Are you proud? But I also want to point out for everybody that this is a love story, that what sets Paul off on his quest is a love story. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So Paul is a newlywed man as the book begins, and he deeply loves his wife, and they live in this kind of mythic proto-capitalist hellscape of Lumptown, where he mines this mineral called lump, which is similar to coal and oil, but it has some very strange, highly toxic properties, but also some healing properties as well when it's refined. And Paul's wife gets infected with poisoning from this mineral, and Paul has about 30 days to try to find a cure for her, and so he sets off on this quest.
I love that this whole thing starts out as a quest for love and then kind of opens out like a river delta into this interrogation of, well, just about everything that is important to us as humans in this country. The question I'm going to ask next, because this is the number one question across the board that you will get at all your readings. Where did you get the idea for this book?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know the story so well because you know me so well, but the story has a few origins. One is that it is, I'll give you the more literary origin, is that it's based on the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is one of my favorite stories. And for anybody who's not read the Epic of Gilgamesh, I recommend the Stephen Mitchell translation. I mean, you can read the Epic of Gilgamesh in about 45 minutes. It's a very short story, but it's brilliant, it's witty, and it's one of the great mythic stories that's actually not about war. And that's one of the things that I love about it, because in my generation, there hasn't been a huge kind of like civilization upturning war. Most people who are my age and born around the time that I was born, haven't served in the military. Many have, but it's not like World War I or World War II or the Vietnam War. And I think a lot of what consumes my generation is issues of capitalism and personal destiny and kind of what should you do with your life. And so the Epic of Gilgamesh is really about those things. It's about 4,000 years old, and it's about two friends who go around ancient Mesopotamia and like fight monsters and, you know, deal with lust and temptation and try to, you know, find eternal life. So with that as a basis, and it's just a beautifully structured book. So that was one of the things that inspired me. And then also I told it as a bedtime story to my kids. I mean, that was like my very first run was a bedtime story for my kids. So I have 4 interracial kids, and what I wanted to do was tell them a story about a Black person and a white person in a kind of unexpected and positive partnership, just like the relationship that I have with my wife. And there aren't that many positive stories about race and kind of across race boundaries. There are some, but generally, I think the kind of race stories that we see today are very negative. And I just want to say that, like, that is completely appropriate. It is right. We're going through a reckoning in this country about what our past really was like and what race relations, what are the foundations of race relations, and how do we see systems and institutions that perpetuate racism. All of this is extremely important, and those stories must be told. But for me, my most immediate experience of race relations is with my wife and my children, because I wake up every day in a house with 6 people and I'm the only white guy in my house. And so having positive, loving relationships across a race boundary is something that's essential to me. And it's basically my every single day. And these relationships are the most meaningful and the most positive relationships in my life. And so I really wanted to tell that kind of positive story across a race boundary. So you put those two things together, the kind of basic beats and structure of the Epic of Gilgamesh, and my desire to tell my children a story about a Black person and a white person working in partnership. And this story evolved, and I told it over the course of about 30 days to my kids. And, you know, I told lots of stories to my kids. None of them were a hit like this one. And as soon as I knew that it sort of passed the test with them, and they kept wanting more and more and more of the story, and they remembered the story and told parts of it back to me, I thought, okay, well, maybe this story could really work for adults as well. And I could begin to interrogate all these big issues about America that I wanted to interrogate, while also keeping the kind of rollicking, fun storyline.
That was a great answer, even if it included Gilgamesh. I've been teasing Mark about Gilgamesh for years, and like, don't say Gilgamesh on tour. Of course, we say it. But we told you.
Wait, but why not? Why not? Can you tell me why not? Why shouldn't I say Gilgamesh?
Because I read Gilgamesh in college, and I was like, it's a very personal thing. But I didn't have an engaged and energetic professor explaining to me why I should be reading Gilgamesh in the first place. And saying it's a myth that doesn't include war, I think, makes it very appealing. Because hopefully we're not on the brink of war in this country.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we may be, which is another reason I feel like your book is so important. It does interrogate, and it doesn't shy away from America's atrocious foundation of race and how we treated Black people in this country and Native Americans and just about anybody who wasn't white as conquerors and colonialists. And yet at the same time, it does offer this hopeful vision. So I think it's a really important thing for everybody to read who lives here. And you also just answered one of my questions, but led into another question, which is, not only are you taking on this big topic, I mean, as a husband of a Black woman and a father of mixed race kids, who, by the way, were at the launch last night and were adorable. And if Mark went on too long, his son Henry would be like, you'd be like a bird putting his head under his wing, which is so great. So I was like kind of gauging, like, okay, we need to snap it up. Henry is going to like pass out. That's how Mark's book is written. Like, it kept Henry awake. You should read this book. It will keep you up. You will not be able to put it down. Henry and Mark and I guarantee it. Anyway, what I was going to say is, you also write from the point of view of a Native American woman who's basically like a STEM woman named Bright Eyes. And I thought that was such a great choice and a brave choice as a white dude who is investigating like so many questions about America. Was that challenging for you? And why did you include Bright Eyes' perspective? Also writing from the point of view of a woman.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Oh yeah, I mean that was it's such an important part of the book, and the way that the plot unfolds, it really gets into kind of Native American conquest and how the West was won, and sort of extractive capitalism of this mineral called lump from Native American lands. So those are sort of kind of like the intellectual underpinnings of it. But I really loved writing that character so much. And I felt like it added so much to the book. As white people today, I think white people are really kind of coming into their own in terms of like trying to figure out like how am I seen by, say, Black people or Native people in this country? How is my history seen? How is the behavior of my ancestors seen? What is my legacy as a white person in this country? This is something that people were not thinking about as much in the past as they are now. And I really wanted to, there's an important point in the story where Bright Eyes has a lot of leverage over Bunyan, and she has something that Bunyan wants and she won't give it to him. And she tells him why. And it's one of my favorite parts of the book. And the audiobook just came out this morning, and I went right to that part and I wanted to hear how the narrator read it. And it was so well done. But it was like Bunyan hearing sort of like, as a white man, like, what is the reason why you won't kind of cooperate with me? What do you have against me? And Bunyan is kind of ignorant, and he's like, tell me. And she really lets him have it. And ultimately, I think they work through what is between them, but it was just so important for Bunyan to really hear it. Just as it's important for all white people to really hear it and pay attention to what the real story of this country is. Now, I will say that like I wrote many books before that didn't get published. And one of them that I wrote was about Custer and Crazy Horse and the Battle of Little Bighorn. And for that book, I did so much research about Native American history. I mean, I spent 5 years trying to write that book, a book that never got published. And I went out to Montana and I went to reservations, and I did a lot for that book and really threw myself into it, but it never went anywhere. And when I wrote this, therefore, I felt like I was a little bit on firmer footing. It wasn't just like I was coming to Native American history fresh, but I did have that previous book that I sort of condensed a lot of the best stuff from that into about 20 or 30 pages at the climax.
I find that very inspiring in a nothing is wasted kind of way. The writers who are watching, and thank you everybody for watching, and writers, that there are so many pages that get cut that are in the proverbial attic or like on the cutting room floor. And I love the idea that a book that didn't make it can then be recycled into a book that, or like upcycled, as they say now, into a book that ultimately does see the bookstore shelf. Really great. And also, I think it underscores Mark's true and passionate interest in his topic. So it's not like some appropriation thing where it's like, oh, I'm writing about America, I just have to include everybody's perspective in order to sort of pander to that idea. Like, this is something you've been carrying around for a long time.
Yeah, I really have. And it's really important to me. I mean, I remember the first time I was ever out in, I think it's in Montana or South Dakota, this gigantic Crazy Horse statue that's carved into the side of a mountain. That was like the reason why I started writing that book. I was one of the most awe-inspiring moments confronting art in my entire life, that gigantic Crazy Horse statue. And I think they're still working on it. It's still far from being finished, but it's sort of like an answer to Mount Rushmore. And it really piqued my interest. And I thought, God, I just don't know the story of the West and Native culture. And so I don't know, that's been like a 20-year project for me.
I was just going to say, I saw both Rushmore and Crazy Horse statue when I was storm chasing. And I think you can't really see one without the other, or should not see one without the other. Can you talk a little bit about the friendship between Bunyan and Henry?
Yeah. So I think I love male friendship. I love like bromances. I think, you read a lot today about how men just sort of have a hard time being friends with each other. I mean, that's never been the case for me. I love like guys trips, guys weekends, like hanging out with dudes in every form. Right. And, but I just think like I was able to kind of really make this friendship, this unlikely friendship. They start out fighting each other, right? They fight each other in this like cash fight outside of the Windy City, which is sort of like the mythic version of Chicago. And they're trying to tear each other to pieces. And then they realize they can't defeat each other, and so it's better to just team up and help each other, because John Henry he's trying to escape from prison. He was thrown in prison on a racist rigged trial, and he's trying to escape to be with his family. And so they realize that they can help each other, and so they do. And there's just enormous great moments of tenderness in that relationship, and ways that Paul Bunyan, he has a lame foot from which he injured when he was a child in a stampede that killed his father, and he is very guarded at first about talking about the way that he is injured to John Henry. John Henry himself is very guarded with Bunyan and very suspicious of him as a white person. He's very protective and secretive about his family. But eventually, these two need each other so much that they open up to each other, and they save each other. And I just thought it's a beautiful thing, and friendship is a beautiful thing. And I love books like that.
I want to talk a little bit about authorial courage too, because as you're talking about these men, I have read Bunyan and Henry. I've had that privilege already, having seen it from early drafts to its final incarnation. And so I know these guys as guys, like they're my friends now. Like I could go on my own bromance trip with them as like, the girl tagging along attached to the bumper. And when Mark first started writing this book, I thought, you are really like approaching these two very mythic characters. I personally, even as a historical novelist, I try to shy away from writing about people who are real, because I feel like, what if I don't do that justice? Did you ever have a sort of quailing feeling about approaching American legend and interpreting it in your own way?
I didn't at all. I mean, to me, I just feel like I'm like in a long line of people who reinterpret myths, right? I mean, you go all the way back to Homer and like the traveling bard trope, I mean, these people who kind of stories are passed down through oral tradition, and then, they put different pieces of it together and they tell it in their own way. And then in the next generation kind of reinterprets it in another way. I mean, this is a massive thing that's going on in contemporary literature today with myth retellings. And I just feel like the great thing about a myth retelling is that you're already dealing with some level of familiarity. Like you don't need to build up the character. Like the character sort of exists in the reader's mind. And it also has a certain amount of gravitas already that you don't need to establish. I think Paul Bunyan is a less serious figure than John Henry. I think John Henry is maybe the greatest mythic figure that America has. We have a very young literature. We don't have a lot of mythic heroes. We have historical quasi-mythic heroes like George Washington and Martin Luther King and Sitting Bull. But we don't have like the traditional mythic hero. I don't mean like Superman and, Wonder Woman, people who have supernatural powers like that, but the kind of like the Beowulf, the Gilgamesh, the Hercules, the Odysseus, Arjuna, King Arthur, people like that who are, there is a kind of deep, there's a depth to the stories, and the stories are about how to live your life, and but they're also full of adventure and full of magic. And I just love those kinds of stories so much. And when I finally started writing in this vein, I felt so liberated as an artist. And like, that's such a gift. And I mean, I just feel like, you asked, like, did I feel, have any kind of hesitation about kind of entering these pre-existing myths? I mean, I just feel like that's what they're there for. I mean, these myths are sort of waiting for all of us to help us express our deepest feelings, and myths are a gift. And just as my book, hopefully one day, will be a gift to somebody else who wants to rewrite what I wrote, right? And just take what they like from it and get rid of the rest and tell a new story about Paul Bunyan and John Henry.
Thank you for adding to the lineage of this. We aspire as, still a baby country. So you're extending the lineage for us. You mentioned living an authentic life, which I said in my opening remarks is one of my favorite things about the book. And you and I have talked extensively, off camera about emotional autobiography, which is one of my favorite phrases that Mark uses. We both agree that every novel that is successful includes a degree or is mapped to the emotional autobiography of the writer, even if the reader can't quite see it. Can you talk about your own twisty path to your beautiful destiny in terms of the publication of this book?
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's a bloody one. Yeah, I mean, so people who've heard me speak and who know me know this story, but obviously a lot of new people are reading this book don't know me at all and so don't know my story. But yeah, I had this life where I was right out of college. I took a job. I started my family. I was moving up in my career in my 30s, and I just was in a situation where I was doing well enough to support my family along with my wife, but I felt completely empty inside, and I felt like I was living a transitional kind of life, a kind of a provisional kind of life, a life where you're waiting for your real life to begin. And I always just thought, well, one day I'm going to do this thing that I've always known I wanted to do. I've known I wanted to be a writer since I was a teenager, but I just never quite took the leap. And eventually, my wife, I mean, she encouraged me for such a long time, like, you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. Like, you need to chase this thing, which is your true one calling. And finally, when I was about 40, I just decided to do it. And there were a number of reasons for that. But one of them is I had a conversation with my brother-in-law, and he is a very successful musician who tours around the world with a number of different bands. And he told me that when you put 2 feet in, the universe notices. And I think that is so true. And when you only have 1 foot in something, like, I sort of want to be a writer, but I sort of want to hedge it and have my job too, just in case the writing thing doesn't work out. But when you sort of burn the ships and you put 2 feet in and you just open your arms and you say, I'm going to be a writer, and that's just what's going to happen, and I don't have a plan B. When you do that, things change. Things change within you, and things change in the way people see you. Your attitude changes toward your art. You take your art more seriously. People around you look at you and they say, hey, this guy burned the ships. This guy is like really doing this thing, and he doesn't have a plan B. Like, art must be that important to him. And so other people who also have 2 feet in are like, he's like one of us now. He's willing to risk this much, risk a whole career he built for himself and start from ground zero. He's willing to risk that for art. He takes art that seriously. And so you get welcomed in by people like yourself, Jen. I mean, I feel like that was sort of part of the beginning of our friendship. I just came to you and I was like, this is what I'm doing. It's my only plan. Help me. I mean, so that was part of it. But you asked this question about emotional autobiography, and this is a long-winded way of me saying, like, this book is about Paul Bunyan following these same kind of emotional beats that I followed. He begins as somebody who kind of is lost in his life, and he doesn't want to follow this twisty path to the beautiful destiny. He sees this magic light in the world. It's one of the magic properties of this world. He sees this thing called the gleam, which he sometimes sees on the ground, or he sees as an aura around people. And he sort of doesn't know what it means. He's like, should I follow it? Should I not? Does the fact that I see the gleam make me crazy? Does it not? And ultimately, the gleam is the thing that he needs to follow to arrive at his beautiful destiny. But it takes a lot of courage to follow that little voice, that little light inside you. And the path is indeed very twisty. So all the things that I went through to become a published author, like, Bunyan is kind of going through all these same beats of struggle and self-doubt and, discouragement until he finally gets where he wants to go.
I don't know why, but like, I'm getting a little bit teary. There are like various points in Mark's book where I get a little bit teary reading the passages because they are so passionate and heartfelt. But like, taking the courage to follow the little gleam, I think, is so important. Like, for some reason, that is like literally making me choke up. So the writers, again, know, like, it takes a lot to ask yourself that question, like, am I crazy? Yes, I probably am crazy, but this thing is persistent and compelling, and it is forcing me to write it and to devote huge passages of my life to something that may or may not come to fruition or ever see the light of a shelf. But you have to have the courage to do that and follow the little gleam, and I love that. So
And just one last thing, Jenna. I mean, it's just, I just was at a certain age, and I just thought to myself, like, there is this calling within me. There is this gleam. And if I don't follow it now, it's just going to be too late. I mean, I've just delayed long enough. And there's this kind of feeling, it got to this point where I just, it almost wasn't even like a choice. But I just thought, I'm running out of time. And there was this kind of existential panic almost, like, if I don't try this thing that I've always wanted to do now, I'm never going to be able to try it. And that's just what Paul goes through in the book.
And you should all go through in your lives, like, what do you want to do? Mark's one of the guys Mark coaches with showed up last night at the launch, surprising everybody. And he had this placard that he had made for Mark that said, what would you do if you knew you could not fail? And I love that. And I also think, what would you do if you knew you could fail, but you had to do it anyway, and you really love it and you want to do it? Like, that is basically what Paul does in Bunyan and Henry. It's also what Mark has done with his books. You know what I have never asked you in all the years of our friendship and all the jillions of hours that we have spent talking about literature and about life? Why do you want to write? Why do you have that gleam? Like, what is that?
This is a great question that is like totally vast. And I've like thought about this question a great deal. And like, there's a great George Orwell essay about it. Like, I think it's called like Why I Write or something. But he doesn't have a great answer for it either. It's just, I think it's just one of these unanswerable things, almost like, why does Michael Jordan like playing basketball? You know, like why does anybody like anything? And I think if it was like truly rational, then it wouldn't be strong enough. I mean, I think it has to be irrational and subconscious and driven by this inner need that like cannot be satisfied any other way. And, you know, if you can talk yourself out of being a writer, you're probably not going to be able to last, because there's so much failure and discouragement along the road. You have to just need it. And so the question is, why do I need it? And I don't know. I mean, I think here's what I'll say. Ever since I was young, I've always felt that mastering words helped me master reality. Like if I could like literally come to terms with something, find words for how I'm feeling, or find words for what a situation is, or explain to myself why something is the way it is. Well, it felt to me then that I had overcome it in some way, right? And so I think that's part of it. So there's part of it kind of coming to terms as kind of a mastery over reality. And then the other thing is the great communion of talking to somebody. I mean, I just feel like this book is an invitation to have a deep conversation. It's a kind of a deep meditation about a lot of things that I think a lot about, which is like, what does it mean to live an authentic life? You know, what does it mean to really love somebody? What does friendship really mean? How important is it? You know, how important is race in America and class and things like that. And I just have thought to the best of my ability and put it in as compact and economical a package, as entertaining a package as I could. And I'm sitting down before you and saying this is the closest thing you can have in the most concentrated version of like a great one-on-one conversation with me. Here's like everything I believe about life. And those moments when you sit down with another human being and you're like, this is what I believe about life, and tell me what you believe about life. And they told you and tell you, and they reveal themselves to you. These moments of mutual revelation are so, so powerful. And so that's another reason why I like talking, because I think through words, anyway, for me, there is a lot of ability to self-reveal and to have somebody else reveal themselves to me. So those are some of the reasons why I love words and communication.
I can't believe I never asked you that before. I love that answer. It's landing beautifully with the audience. And your mom, Patsy, who I had the privilege of finally meeting last night in 3 dimensions, said that you showed great imagination and facility with words from when you were very young. Nobody is surprised. I think there's a sort of urgency to it also, like a kind of a pressure to write that I felt also from being a little kid. Like we all have these sort of facile reasons. Like my dad was a writer. I wanted to be a writer. But I remember writing to capture, which in a way is like mastering reality. Like we all live along the banks of this great river of time. And I always felt that I could maybe step into the river and capture one of the moments, or a tree or an animal or an experience. Like you carry out a beautiful rock from that river of time and you preserve it in writing. So there's that. Also, like, this is why I love our conversation so much. We can geek out about this stuff forever. And this is like literally what we talk about, like after Thoughtful Bro shows, our debrief. We're like, let's talk about the writing. So Mark, thank you for helping me sink a taproot down into my life, beneath the promotion, beneath the hats, beneath the whatever, into what's really important, which is this form of communication that we all so love. So here you are, having wanted to write, having been writing since you were little, you know, having wanted to do this your whole life, having this great conviction, courage about it, having interviewed everybody from George Saunders to Alexander Vindman to Priyanka Champaneri to Jennifer Egan to moi. And now it is your pub day for your debut. What the F does this feel like to you? Like, what does this day feel like?
Well, first of all, there was this big launch party last night, and so I'm like totally exhausted from that. And you can probably hear my voice is like 5 octaves lower than it would normally be. So I feel exhausted from that. But I would say the biggest thing I feel right now is relief. Because I've written so many books and I've been going for so long trying to find, what is the right story for me? What is the right genre for me? What is the right voice for me? What's the right style for me? All these things. What do I want to say? I don't want to write a book unless I want to really have something truly to say. And I felt like I finally did. I was so lucky. I'm so lucky. I had something to say. I found the correct genre to express what I wanted to say. I had the situation in my life where I had the time and the resources to devote myself to this 100% and actually say it. After the end of that long journey, finally today, the book is out in the world, and I just can't tell you, I've had like my eyes on that distant shore for so many years. And, I've had, there's like a lot of kind of like stories that you and I have commiserated over the years about so many near misses. Like any writer who's listening to this, and I see a lot of writers that I recognize in the chat here. I know anybody who's really in the writing game has had their share of near misses and heartbreaks. I mean, that's just what this world is. But I just feel actually on this day so grateful that those were near misses, because I look back at those books that were almost published, that came so close to being my first book, and I think none of them is like really me the way this book is me. Those books maybe were written by me, but could have been written by other people. This is the one book that I wrote that was like only I, of all the 8 billion people in the world, could have written. It just feels like it's so me. And, this is what my book is about, the twisty path to the beautiful destiny. And it's like, I finally feel like I got there, and like nobody can take it away from me now. I'm here and my book is out in the world. And, it's just very gratifying.
I'm so glad to hear that. Is there something that's surprising to you about your launch day, your pub day?
How much is going on social media is surprising to me. Like everybody who's posting about me and my book, just know I'm so grateful. And I'm looking at my Instagram and I immediately have to put my phone down because there's like so much activity. I am so floored and just grateful that so many people came out and are coming out tonight to South Hadley, coming out in New York on tomorrow, and tweeting about me and posting about me online. I mean, it's just overwhelming. I mean, I'm just so used to kind of like doing my own little thing, and now people are really showing up for me, and boy, it's something.
It's interesting, right? It's like you're Charlotte in the web, and then all of a sudden people can see you after you
Yes.
in the web. But you're actually a spider. Nobody actually sees you. They just see the web. But no, we see you, we love you. That's what the social is all about. And Mark and I have talked about this, that when you're an author and you're launching a book, your social is like all of these firecrackers and fireworks of love and joy and excitement, explosion. And you literally cannot get to it because you're like, I have to drive to this thing or do this event or, do this. So everybody who has been so kind as to loft Mark up, know that he sees you and will get to you ASAP.
Can I just make one more comment? No. So I see Robin Stull in the comments has said, I've been saving an audio credit for one book, and this might be it. And Robin, let me tell you, this is it. Like that, and that is actually the answer to your question, Jenna. Like, what has surprised me about Pub Day? I woke up this morning and I hit play on the Bunyan and Henry audiobook, and I'd never heard it. I got to pick the narrators for it, but I'd never heard them do it. And it was so stunningly beautiful. I mean, like, I cried when I listened to some parts of my books. I mean, like, I went to what I knew were like some of the most emotional parts and some of the big climaxes because I wanted to see how they handled it. And my goodness, it was so wonderfully done. Ari Fliakos is the name of the main narrator, but there's other narrators as well. And oh my God, I was just overwhelmed because I feel like I'm very close to an oral tradition. It began as a story that was kind of made up off the top of my head, sort of for my kids. It began as that way, and it maintains a lot of that spirit. But that's also work that really works for me. I mean, I love books that feel like they could be read aloud, that feel like someone talking to me, rather than kind of a real dense book. And so, oh my God, they brought this thing to life on the page, and I was floored. So I think the audio experience of this book is going to be maybe even better than just the reading experience.
I'm so excited to listen to the audio. I had the great privilege of Mark sending me some of the people who were auditioning to be the narrators and be like, what do you think about this one, this one, this one, this one? Of course, he listened to like none of my opinions about anything, but it was really fun. And they are great. Like the ones Mark chose are great, and narrators plural, because as I mentioned, there's a character named Bright Eyes who's Native American. Like they have a Native American narrator reading her, right? So it's like, it is a great way to bring this book to life. And speaking of reading aloud, I'm going to read one thing from the book, and then I am going to open the floor to questions. I know we have a lot of them, and I've really been hogging the mic here. But I want to read something that I think pertains to Mark talking about the near misses that all of the writers know. One of our readers who's attending today, Susie, just said, defeat in the past must make success that much sweeter, which is true. So if you haven't gotten to that place yet, you will. It's a crusade, right, Mark? I'm going to read, those of you who have your Bunyan and Henry already, you can turn to 183 in your prayer books, because this is what one of our friends called the writer's psalm. And it's a creature talking to Bunyan about that little light that he follows called the gleam. So page 183, tell me then, have you yet heard 1,000 no's before hearing a single yes? Have you searched the utmost corners of your soul to find your final effort? And even then, after all has been given, have you found a way to give again? And tell me, in your time on the twisty path, have you borne what you never thought you could bear, yet still kept true to the compass of your soul? And have you, amid all the battles with the obstacles outside you, yet contended with the obstacles within you? And in your fear, in this, your terrible hour of fear, have you proven you can wait out the dark, and when daylight comes, step into the gusting winds once more? And have you yet learned to keep the faith that at the end of all your suffering you will find a door? Have you yet learned that even with 100 backwards, sideways, and painful steps, the twisty path will still deliver you to beauty in the final moment? And have you realized that every second you have spent on the wrong path has prepared the way for your ultimate deliverance? That's like, I'm having a hard time reading this. Like, it makes me cry every time I read it. Like, tell your audience before I give the mic to everybody else. Like, what were you feeling when you wrote that passage? And is this about your path, everybody's path? Is this the ultimate message of Bunyan and Henry?
Oh man, that passage really gets me choked up too. Yeah. So Bunyan is led along through the twisty path by this mythical creature called a Chilali, who, well, you'll have to read the book to figure out who the Chilali is and why and when he appears to Bunyan. But he does appear as a kind of spiritual mentor. And this moment in the book is like right at the midpoint of the book. And Bunyan is like, he has been trying to follow the twisty path, but he has just failed. And he has come to this point of abject failure. Like he gave up everything in his life to follow this. And he's way worse off than he began. And he's basically saying to himself, I'm going back to the old way. It's over for me. And now I'm getting all emotional about it because that's when the Chilali appears to him and says those things. And that passage goes on a little bit longer than that, but that's a great part of it. But for me, that is the Chilali is sort of like being a little bit more serious than he's been. Before then, he's sort of leading him on like through carrots a little bit and just saying like, you know, have you ever thought about it this way? Have you thought about it this way? Have you tried to think about how you could follow a different way of living, right? But at this moment, he's really got to like kind of shake Bunyan a little bit and be like, no, like you just don't understand. Like you're just at the beginning and it's okay. You know, you are failing now. Yes. But there's more within you and you can take it. You can bear this, you know? And it's like you asked, is that the message of my book? I would love it if one of the things that people got from this book is that they are thinking about making a change in their life, and all kinds of people want to change for all kinds of reasons. People want to change their relationships and their bodies and their habits and their beliefs, their jobs, their homes. People want to change everybody wants to change something about their life. And if there was a way that this book, you could just kind of take from it this bottled kind of courage that, like, you think you can't take anymore, but actually you're far greater than that, and you can take it, and you can see this through all the way to the end. I would love it if people took that from it.
That is a beautiful message. Thank you. And I have to say, as an interviewer, you guys maybe have seen me do some interviews on The Blaze. It's always my most proud moment in an interview if I can make somebody cry, but I didn't mean myself. Mark, thank you for making us cry with the beauty of these words and of that message. And I do encourage everybody to read Bunyan and Henry, because I do think it has this very uplifting and inspiring, as you have just heard, quality that will make you think, well, what do I want to do authentically? And give yourself props for living your most authentic life. Many of us know that's a really difficult thing to do. So now, while I recover, I would like to put up some audience questions. I know we have a bunch. Okay, so Priyanka. Hi, Priyanka. Mark, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the hero's journey, why you chose to write about a quest, and why you think the hero's journey is such an enduring framework loved by writers and readers. Great question.
Well, Priyanka, I am so glad you're here. Priyanka Champaneri is a great, great, great writer. Please check out her writing. She wrote a book called The City of Good Death, and I had her on my show previously. What an amazing person she is, and what a great writer. So this question that you just asked, I mean, I could literally probably talk for 7 straight hours without stopping about the hero's journey. And I'm going to try to do it in like 90 seconds here. But what I want to say about the hero's journey is that it's gotten a lot of flack lately, right? And it's very unfashionable to say that you write in the hero's journey fashion, or you believe in that as a kind of structure for storytelling. But to me, the hero's journey is just, I like to actually call it the human journey, because I think if you boil the hero's journey down and you take away a lot of the kind of obscure mythical references that Campbell was making when he structured all the kind of like 19 or 20 steps of the hero's journey, if you boil it all down, the hero's journey is just this: a person wants something or needs something. Act 1. At the end of Act 1, they decide they're going to go get it. Act 2 is the process of them trying to get it. Act 3 is the result. Did they get it or did they not get it? That's it. Want to get it, try to get it, did or did not get it. And then that just repeats over and over and over and over again. And that describes everything from the entire Lord of the Rings story to I woke up this morning and needed to get a cup of coffee, right? And I feel like it's like the basic micro unit of like the human experience. So I just believe in that model for just creating excitement and creating desire and creating motivation for characters. And as far as kind of like Campbell himself and like some of the bigger kind of mythic claims that he makes about, you know, the meeting with the goddess and the visit to the underworld and the reconciliation with the father, these kind of beats that he saw across many different cultures and kind of that seem to reflect a collective unconscious. I think there's so much to be said about that. I think Campbell was a brilliant man. And I think he's a little bit out of fashion now, but I think he's done a great deal to help people like me understand how great stories are told.
You can now all understand why when anybody has a structure issue in our novel workshop, we all go to Mark, like I go to him myself. And by the way, a big shout out to the novel workshop, so many of whom are here today, so many of whom are Blazers, including Trisha Blanchett, who is our podcast director, who asks, why did you decide to include magical and fantasy elements?
Yes, this is a great question. So I wrote in reality, I wrote in a kind of realist tradition previously, and I just found it very limiting. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't quite believe in reality. And what I mean by that is I just feel that for me, the human experience, the experience of being me, Mark Cecil, is one where just thinking that I am a bunch of chemicals and everything is a bunch of chemicals and vibrating atoms and electricity kind of zipping around the universe, right? That is a way to look at what human existence is and what the nature of the universe is. But it is not a way that I find to be particularly helpful or enlightening or inspiring. And it doesn't give me the feelings that I like. And of course, a scientist could say, well, reality isn't about your feelings and, science isn't about your feelings. But I just believe that a mythic way of thinking about yourself is actually the most healthy way to think, and to think of yourself that you are like on a hero's journey, or that you are going toward a beautiful destiny. I mean, these words, the twisty path and the beautiful destiny, I mean, what are those? Those are mythic terms. They're metaphors, right? But I believe in those metaphors, and there's sort of a poetry and a pattern in the phrase "twisty path to the beautiful destiny." It describes my life. I think it describes the life of other people. I think it describes the life of anybody who's trying to make something out of their life which is more than what it is. And so, rather than saying like I'm just a bunch of chemicals and there's not enough dopamine in my blood and therefore I'm gonna switch my job or something, right? It's just such a kind of like complicated and uninspiring and really, to me, inaccurate way of looking at life. And this more mythic vein of thinking about human life and the human experience and the meaning of your life is actually more truthful to me.
Damn, bro, you are on fire today.
I'm sort of waking up in the second half of the interview. Oh my God. I'm like so exhausted, but I'm ready to go.
All right, people, bring on your questions. Another of our amazing blazers, Margaret Pinard, asks, did you work with sensitivity readers, and how was that experience layered on top of the story? Another great question.
Right. I did work with sensitivity readers, and thank God for that. I was so happy to have a sensitivity reader. I mean, I'm somebody who generally likes feedback, and I seek out feedback any way I can because I think and it made it helpful in this story. I think some people resist feedback, but for me, and I have resisted it in the past, but for me, I was so sure about my story. I was so sure that like this was the story I wanted to tell, that I just was like, I want as much help as I can get. Stephen King has this great metaphor. I think it's the greatest metaphor for how stories get written. And he said, stories are like fossils that are buried under the earth. And as the writer, you are digging around and like you find a big like femur over here and you're like, oh, maybe this is a whale or maybe this is a dinosaur. But then you dig over here and it's a skull and you're like, oh, actually it's a woolly mammoth or whatever, right? And you just keep digging around, and sometimes you dig somewhere and it's empty. Sometimes you dig somewhere and you find more bones. And eventually, after a long, long, long effort, you excavate the entire fossil and you're like, that's what this is, right? And so to me, the feedback process is just, and the sensitivity process, reader process is included in that, is just like getting a bunch of other people to dig. Like, let's get a bunch of people on the dig, I mean, like we're going to get this fossil out of here, right? We're going to figure out what this thing is, but I'd rather have help than dig by myself, right? And if somebody else is an expert in digging over here, then please be an expert, because I'm not an expert in everything. So that's how I felt about the sensitivity reader, and my sensitivity reader was terrific.
That's really great. Did you get anything that made you, any feedback that made you change something in the book?
Actually, no. And I mean, I say they were so great because they had like a lot of great comments about the book, but I mean, I'm like terrified to actually say this, but they sort of gave me the green light on, it was a Native American reader and they read the Native American pieces. They read the whole book, but that was sort of why we really wanted them. And she said that it was really well written and there weren't a lot of changes. But I think part of that just comes from how much research I had previously done. I mean, this wasn't me just like throwing in a Native American character for the heck of it. I mean, I had spent 5 years writing a novel about Native American history that never got published. And so I think I was on a little bit firmer footing. And the ultimate part that was from a Native American perspective is only about 20 pages in my book.
So again, writers, nothing is wasted. Okay, this is a great audience question from Stephen Goss.
Hey,
Will
Steven.
there be a Bunyan and Henry ball cap? We need this.
So that is a great question. And it's an economic question, right? It's just, as it turns out, it's really expensive to make custom baseball hats. And also, Stephen, I have a gigantic head. And so like hardly any hats fit me. And so like I often like order hats and then like they just, my head is too gigantic for them. And so like I have to like throw away hats. So it's not only expensive to make custom hats, but few custom hats actually even fit me. So it's just too complicated at this point. But I'm keeping hope alive. And Stephen, you know me so well. That is like exactly the kind of thing that I would love to have.
But for those of us who don't have giant heads, we would all like to have Bunyan and Henry ball caps, please. I have a wee head. I would like to have a little pinhead Bunyan and Henry cap, please. Thoughtfulness. It's because you are the thoughtful bro that you have such a book. All right, Mark is losing his voice. Believe it or not, I've kept you for an hour. I know the time flies talking to your hoe here, but if you had, I've been waiting to ask this question my entire friendship with you. What would you like to say to your readers?
What would I like to say to my readers?
Yes, now I a little cry again.
Yeah. Just about my book, or
just if you had one thing to say to readers, what would it be? All the people who are about to pick up your book, all the people who are holding your book in their hands.
This is what I want to say.
Okay.
This is what I want to say.
Buy the book.
So no. So you can get it from the library. I just want you to read the book. I want you to experience it. And there's a friend of ours who's a bookseller named Mary Weber O'Malley, and she put a blurb online about this book that said, "This is the kind of book that made me fall in love with reading." And that means so much to me. I would just say to anybody here, like, this book is going to lead you along with a sure hand, and it's going to lead you to many, many fantastic places, both on the surface and philosophically and spiritually. It's a funny book too. We never talk about the funny, like a person said to me recently, like, that's one of the funniest books I've read. So it is funny, but deep down, I would just say anybody who reads this book, trust me, I am going to make it worth your while. My heart is behind this book. And I feel like after so many books not getting it right, I finally got it right on this one. And just come on this journey with me. I think it'll be worth it.
I know it will be worth it. And your final question, which is always the T-Bro dismount question, so nobody will be surprised. How do you want your readers to feel when they're done reading this book?
I've thought about this so often, but I would want them to like clutch the book to their chest and then just let out this sound, clutch to their chest and be like, oh, it's like this like life affirming sound, like I want to be alive. That's what that sound means. I want to be alive. I want to be alive more than when I started this book. That's the feeling that I want.
I'm going to translate that into the sound, because with books that I love, when I finish reading them, I say thank you and I kiss the book. So I will just hug it and be like, yeah, that's the sound, right? Right?
Want to be alive. Yes.
Want to be alive. Want to be alive more than ever, to follow that gleam. Folks, pick up at least 50 copies each of Bunyan and Henry, The Beautiful Destiny. Give it to everybody you know who you want to feel uplifted and inspired, to laugh, to think deeply. Thoughtful bro, we love you so much. We're so proud of you. I'm gonna make myself cry again. Everybody follow Mark on his tour as well. Go to his social and his website, markcecil.com. You will see his entire tour schedule.
markcecilauthor.com.
markcecilauthor.com. markcecilauthor.com. You will see his tour schedule there. Go see him, starting with tonight's appearance at the Odyssey Bookstore in South Hadley, Massachusetts. And those of you who are far afield, thank you for joining us. You can get Bunyan and Henry on our stall at Bookshop. Mark, we hope you just love continuing on your beautiful destiny that you have earned by traveling this twisty path. Thank you, bro.
Well, being on this interview with you, Jenna, has made me feel
Be alive more than ever. Get after it. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day and happy reading to you all. We'll see you again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.